This is an issue that's going to cause, I think, widespread tax increases, widespread cuts to government services, or a mixture of the two.
That's Jonathan Williams from the American Legislative Exchange Council. Chatted with him yesterday about their most recent study showing that Illinois has the second largest per capita cost when it comes to public sector pensions. And we're talking $37,000 per man, woman, and child in the state of Illinois. Second to only Alaska, which has a per capita pension cost of around $40-some-odd thousand. But overall, nationwide, $7 trillion of unfunded liability that taxpayers ultimately have to cover. And that breaks down for each man, woman, and child, around $22,000 nationwide. But in Illinois, it's the second highest per capita cost at $37,000. So I talked with Williams yesterday to kind of get an idea of what exactly is behind these numbers that they found, and here's some of what he had to say.
There's not a whole lot of good news for the state of Illinois when it comes to the unfunded pension liabilities in the state. It's going to be no surprise to the taxpayers of Illinois that have seen this coming for a very long time. But looking at the most recent report and the new numbers from the official state financial reports, and then taking them into consideration through what we think is a much more reasonable lens through which to view state pensions, and we see the liabilities are truly in a really a scary scenario for Illinois for the future. Looking at nearly $37,000 in unfunded liabilities for every man, woman, and child in the state of Illinois. As you mentioned, second worst in the country. You also look at the overall unfunded liabilities, second worst in the country, with nearly $500 billion in unfunded liabilities in Illinois alone, based on our criteria. And then the other thing you look at, funding ratio, Illinois second worst, and then so I guess if there's something to be said, there's consistency at the bottom of the rankings for Illinois, and all of the different categories we look at. Illinois is among the worst in the nation.
So Jonathan Williams again with American Legislative Exchange Council, their 7th annual report on public sector pensions and the costs to taxpayers. While Illinois was second to last, you have states like Indiana that are near the top. And he talked about how, indeed, these states that are doing well are having some innovative ideas advanced to deal with the growing obligations.
When you look at the states that have the lowest unfunded liabilities, let's say per capita, many of those states have either moved to make sure that they're making these annual payments as the defined benefit plans get more expensive. They just continue to appropriate more taxpayer dollars, and there can be some real arguments over whether that's a wise use of taxpayer dollars or not, but they've just put the amount of money in to keep their plans at least relatively well funded. But then you look at places like Tennessee or Wisconsin or others that do well in our report, and these are states that have begun to share the risk and share the liabilities, really, for it's not just the taxpayers on the hook. If there's a downturn, let's say in Wisconsin, which is at least in a percent funded ratio, the best funded plan in America, with over 60% funded ratio in our calculations, there is a way that now the risk is shared not just among taxpayers, but workers as well would need to increase their own contributions to the plan if their investment returns fall short of their goal. And so we've seen some really innovative ways that states have begun to tackle liabilities.
So what are those ways? And if they're not tackled in a state like Illinois with $140 billion, at least to the Auditor General's numbers, it could lead to some negative things.
But it is an existential issue. And if states don't tackle these unfunded liabilities that now total nearly $7 trillion around the country, this is an issue that's going to cause, I think, widespread tax increases, widespread cuts to government services, or a mixture of the two.
Now, state lawmakers have been holding hearings about the ongoing pension woes. What kind of political will there be to actually advance some kind of change to shore up these costs? Because 1 out of every $5 that the state spends in taxes it brings in is going to public sector pensions. That's just the 5 pension funds the state operates. That doesn't take into account the public safety pensions across the state, fire and police. In some areas, there's an incredible amount of unfunded liability and other pension funds as well, including up in Chicago that has their own problems. So obviously, this is going to be an ongoing conversation on how to deal with all of this. We'll be tracking it, of course. Will it come up during veto session? Probably not, but definitely when they return for the second year of the 2-year term for this legislature. We'll be watching to see if they bring forward any kind of pension changes. But the bottom line is Illinois has the second highest per capita liability for unfunded pension liabilities amid the entire country.